On May 29, 2025, one shareholder letter did what months of rumors could not. It confirmed that Donald Trump's new auto tariffs would drain up to $5 billion from GM this year. The reaction was immediate and brutal. This wasn't one plant shutting down. It was a chain reaction stretching from Detroit to Ontario. Shift cuts, sudden layoffs, suppliers going silent overnight. Wall Street slashed its forecasts, and workers wondered if their jobs were next. The fear wasn't exaggerated. Economists warned that 50,000 American and Canadian jobs could sit on the edge of a cliff. Tariffs had been sold as a way to strengthen U.S. factories. But inside GM headquarters, the numbers told a different story, and the question became impossible to escape. How long can the production line stay quiet before something breaks? That pressure only grew once the fine print behind the tariffs became clear. Tariffs were meant to be a precision tool, a push to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. But when the White House placed a 25% tariff on all imported vehicles and components in April 2025, the impact was anything but precise. GM's finance team immediately sounded alarms. CEO Mary Barra warned shareholders that earnings could fall by $5 billion, threatening research funding for Ultium batteries. A small April adjustment capped stacked duties and added a tiny 3% offset if assembly happened in the US, but it didn't matter. GM's core models still relied on 40% imported parts. That meant nearly every Silverado, Equinox, and Escalade got hit with a cost shock. Add existing steel and aluminum tariffs, and each truck suddenly carried about $3,200 in extra costs. Suppliers felt it first. A part as simple as a steering knuckle jumped from $28 to $36. Multiply that across 30,000 components, and the whole system tightened like a vice. GM tried to absorb the impact, but investors forced mid-year price increases. Yet rising parts weren't the only problem, because the next stage wouldn't just hit the balance sheet, it would hit the factory floor. For 2 years, GM tried to lead America's electric future. Massive investment, big promises, Ultium as the core of a new era. Then everything shifted at once. The $7,500 federal EV tax credit disappeared. Congress froze funding for national chargers. Tariffs on battery minerals pushed Ultium costs even higher, the opposite of what the EV push needed. Inside Factory Zero, brand new Silverado EVs were stacked under plastic sheets, unsold for months. GM's internal numbers revealed something few expected. EV interest dropped from 14% to 7% after incentives vanished. Insurance costs went up. Electricity prices rose. Even 0% financing couldn't save demand. CFO Paul Jacobson admitted a hard truth. GM must sell 100,000 Ultium trucks a year just to break even. But forecasts for 2025 point to maybe 65,000 sales. Each unsold EV ties up over $45,000 of capital, while batteries slowly degrade in storage heat. And consumers look at the market and see sky-high prices and chargers that often don't work. Some return to gasoline. Others wait for something cheaper, or give up on buying a new car at all. So the question grows louder. Was GM's EV bet overestimated, or simply crushed by tariffs and timing? But the turmoil didn't stay inside GM's walls. What happened next pushed workers and unions into one of their hardest divides in years. Detroit's factories have always been full of pride, badge loyalty, family legacies, local identity. But tariffs forced those loyalties into conflict. UAW President Shawn Fain praised Donald Trump's tariffs as a step toward protecting American jobs. Across the border, Unifor blasted GM for cutting Canadian shifts while expanding political-friendly plants in Tennessee. Inside the plants, workers who once supported tariffs now whispered something different. Cut the tariffs. We can't afford this. Mortgages don't wait for political debates. Elastic idling became the new normal. Subway pay covered about 75% of wages, but over time disappeared. Toolboxes stayed packed, ready for another sudden shutdown, a scene painfully similar to Lordstown's closure in 2019. Then came the political theater. Donald Trump brushed off GM's warnings, saying, "They made their choices. No promise of help. No plan. Just a message. Adapt or fall behind." And while workers scrambled, the shockwave spread outward, beyond Detroit, beyond Michigan, beyond the US. Other automakers soon felt the same pressure, and some were hit even harder. GM wasn't the only automaker hit by the tariff shock. The pressure spread fast, across borders, factories, and entire supply chains. Stellantis struggled as its Windsor minivan plant in Canada faced a chaotic 12-week schedule. That alone triggered 900 layoffs in Indiana and Michigan. Dealers overflowed with unsold Pacificas, yet prices still climbed because imported parts were now more expensive. Volvo Group North America prepared to idle nearly 1,000 workers in Pennsylvania and Virginia, as truck prices jumped from $165,000 overseas to almost $180,000 in the US. Meanwhile, GM Korea, which sends 88% of its production to America, warned it could collapse under the 25% tariff burden. The moment echoed GM's 2017 retreat from Australia. Hyundai and Kia rushed to expand their U.S. plants in Alabama and Georgia, but those jobs won't arrive until 2027, and the supply chain? It twisted under the weight. A single Mexican piston now risked multiple tariff charges as it crossed the border 3 different times during production. One supplier in Ontario reported losing $1.2 million in a single week because of a customs error. With every delay, every extra fee, every halted shipment, the world started asking a serious question. Are we entering a new era where everyone pulls their supply chains home, and at what cost? But for GM, the bigger question was simpler and far more urgent. Can the production line restart? And when? Inside GM's headquarters, planners drew 3 possible futures. Best case, by late June, wiring harnesses from Brazil and engines from Mexico begin flowing again. Production in Fort Wayne, Oshawa, and Detroit recovers. Ultium truck output stabilizes near the cautious forecast of 65,000 units. Margins stay thin, but positive. Middle case, new tariffs hit Japanese and Korean electronics. Infotainment modules spike in cost. Plant utilization drops. Washington gridlock blocks relief, and the threat of a credit downgrade grows louder. Worst case, China restricts rare earth minerals. Key EV components vanish. Ultium production halts entirely. US and Canadian plants go dark. Debt outlook collapses. Worker morale sinks to its lowest point in years. In every scenario, 3 forces decide the outcome: policy, demand, and supply chain stability. GM can tighten budgets and delay projects, but none of that fills a $5 billion tariff hole. So here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, tariffs were meant to bring jobs home. Instead, they've pushed GM into its quietest moment in a decade, with thousands of families waiting to hear whether the silence is temporary or the beginning of something worse. What do you think? Are these tariffs protecting American workers, or putting them at risk? And can GM's electric plans survive this storm? Share your thoughts in the comments.